My father kicked me out at 18 for failing his expectations. 18 years later, he funded my $2 million award and watched in shock as I stood on stage. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Here, I share stories inspired by topics I found on Reddit, covering family, friends, and life in general. Today's story is about a person who finds themselves at a crossroads, struggling with the weight of their past while achieving success in a world that's constantly changing. This person, Olivia, fought her way to recognition but had to confront the painful irony that the very success she had earned was funded by the same person who had rejected her. Can you relate to feeling both proud and betrayed at the same time? Stick around to the end to see how Olivia navigates this emotional storm and what she ultimately chooses to do. And if you enjoy this story, I'd really appreciate it if you could help me reach 1,000 subscribers soon, so I can continue bringing more amazing stories to you. It was the evening of the year. The grand ballroom of the prestigious Westbrook Hotel was buzzing with excitement. The glittering chandeliers cast a warm glow on the sea of well-dressed guests, all of whom had gathered to celebrate excellence in technology, education, and innovation. Among them was 32-year-old Olivia Pierce, who, despite her nerves, was trying her best to stay composed. Tonight wasn't just another networking event or a random gala. This was her moment. She had been nominated for the Innovator of the Year award for her groundbreaking work in developing an app that had helped countless students, especially from disadvantaged backgrounds, access quality education. Olivia stood near the back of the room, observing the event unfolding. As she was taking a brief pause to collect herself in the restroom, she didn't expect to encounter anyone familiar. But there she was, her estranged mother, Claire, fresh from a photo shoot for the latest fashion magazine. Olivia froze for a moment, her heart skipping a beat. She hadn't seen Claire in almost 10 years, not since she had walked out of her family's life, leaving her to fend for herself. Claire looked up from the mirror, her sharp eyes locking with Olivia's. Her gaze was cold, distant, as if their shared history hadn't left a single mark on her. "Olivia," Claire said, almost in a whisper, her voice detached, as though they were strangers meeting at a social event. "I didn't expect to see you here. It's been years." Olivia straightened up, her heart pounding. "I could say the same," she replied, her tone as neutral as she could muster. The awkward silence hung in the air before Claire spoke again. "I'm here with your father. You know, we've always been involved with organizations that support innovation. And you? What brings you here?" The words stung, but Olivia kept her composure. "I'm being honored tonight for my work," she replied, her voice steady but thick with the weight of unspoken words. A flicker of surprise passed across Claire's face, but she quickly masked it with a smirk. "How lovely," she said, turning back to the mirror. "Well, I suppose everyone finds their way eventually." Olivia's mind raced. This wasn't just a casual encounter. It was a confrontation of everything she had endured for years. The rejection, the judgment, the emptiness of their family. But now, she was finally on the verge of proving them all wrong. She wasn't the failure they had painted her to be. Olivia sat on the edge of her bed, staring out of the small apartment window as the city lights flickered in the distance. Her mind drifted back to those years at home, years that had shaped her but also broken her. The memory of those years felt like an endless loop she couldn't escape from, a loop that had started long before she had been cast out of the house. It all began with the relentless pressure her father, Gregory Pierce, had placed on her from the moment she could understand what success meant. Gregory Pierce wasn't just a CEO, he was the embodiment of success, or so he thought. His company, one of the top players in the tech industry, had grown exponentially under his command. He was proud of his accomplishments, but more than that, he was obsessed with them. Money, status, prestige. These were the pillars that held his world up, and he expected nothing less than perfection from everyone around him, especially his children. Olivia, the oldest of his two children, had been the one he pinned all his hopes and dreams on. She could still hear his voice, booming in the house when she was a little girl, trying to explain the world to her in terms of success and failure. "You're going to be somebody, Olivia," he would say, his voice deep and commanding. "You'll do better than I ever did. You're going to make a difference. That's the only thing that matters. Don't you forget that." At the time, Olivia didn't fully understand, but she felt the weight of those words every time she sat down to do homework or to prepare for a test. Her father's expectations weren't just words. They were a constant, suffocating pressure. There were no excuses, no room for error. "Why aren't you getting straight A's, Olivia?" he would ask in disbelief when she came home with a B or a C. "This is what we expect from you. Your brothers and sisters will have nothing to be proud of if you don't lead by example." His criticisms were never soft or gentle. His words hit her like a hammer, each one driving her deeper into a sense of inadequacy. Olivia spent countless nights sitting at her desk, eyes red from lack of sleep, surrounded by piles of textbooks, trying to absorb everything at once, but it was never enough. No matter how much she studied, how hard she worked, the pressure was always there. It gnawed at her, telling her she was never going to be good enough. It wasn't just the academics. It was the life that came with it. Gregory expected her to be involved in every extracurricular activity, to play the role of the perfect daughter, the one who attended social events, made her parents proud in front of their business associates, and never showed a hint of weakness. But Olivia wasn't like that. She wasn't the picture of confidence and poise her father expected. She was someone who just wanted to be left alone, to breathe, to live without the constant weight of others' expectations crushing her. As the years passed, Olivia's grades began to slip. It started small: a B in history, a C in math. She hid the report cards, fearful of the inevitable disappointment she would face. But no matter how much she tried to hide her failures, they always came to light. And when she finally got the acceptance letter from the community college, the one place that would allow her to escape the stifling air of her family's mansion, it was as if she had signed her own death sentence in their eyes. The night Gregory saw the letter was a night Olivia would never forget. She had come home after a grueling day of school, tired to the bone. She was hoping for some peace, but instead, she found her father pacing in the living room, holding the letter in his hand with a look of pure rage in his eyes. Olivia's heart sank as she knew what was coming. "Community college?" Gregory had asked, his voice rising in disbelief. "This family doesn't waste time with mediocrity. You're throwing your life away. You've squandered every opportunity I've given you." His voice grew louder, his anger palpable in the room. Olivia stood there, frozen, clutching the letter in her hand. The world around her felt like it was crashing down. Her hands trembled as she tried to speak, but the words wouldn't come. Her father had always been stern, but this was different. This wasn't just disappointment. It was a rejection of everything she was, everything she had worked for, everything she was capable of becoming. "If you want to waste your life, fine," Gregory had shouted, his face red with anger. "But you'll do it on your own. Don't you dare come back here when you realize what a mistake you've made." And just like that, at 18 years old, Olivia was kicked out of the house. No goodbyes, no attempts at reconciliation. She was simply tossed out, like a piece of trash no longer needed. Gregory didn't even bother to come to the door to see her off. Her mother, Claire, stayed silent, sitting in the living room with her eyes fixed on her phone, as though Olivia were invisible. The weight of being discarded was almost too much to bear. She had nothing. No family, no home, no support. Just a duffel bag filled with a few changes of clothes and the harsh, cold reality of being completely alone in a world that felt overwhelmingly large and indifferent. For the first few weeks, Olivia crashed on a friend's couch. The bed was too small and the space was too cramped, but it was all she had. At night, she stared at the ceiling, wondering if she would ever make it. She worked late shifts at a local diner, pouring coffee for people who had no idea that she was struggling to survive, to figure out her next move. Every day felt like a battle, and every night she lay awake, staring at the dark, trying to push back the crushing weight of self-doubt that seemed to follow her everywhere. She didn't know how she would make it. The community college wasn't glamorous. It wasn't prestigious, but it was her only chance, the only place that would let her rebuild. Every night, She would tell herself to keep going, to push through the exhaustion, the fear, the loneliness. "This is the only way forward," she whispered to herself in the dark. "Just keep moving. Just keep pushing." But there were days when that didn't feel like enough. She would watch her classmates talk about their family vacations, their summer houses, the new cars their parents had bought them. It was a reminder that while they were living lives of comfort, she was just trying to scrape by. Every penny she earned from her diner job went to rent and tuition. Every ounce of energy she had was dedicated to surviving. Still, Olivia kept going. She didn't have the luxury of giving up. She didn't have the luxury of feeling sorry for herself. If she wanted a future, if she wanted to prove to herself that she was worth something, she had to keep moving no matter how hard it was. It was that resilience, the stubborn refusal to quit, that would carry her through the darkest days of her life. Olivia wasn't just surviving anymore. She was fighting for something bigger than herself. She was fighting to be seen, to be heard, to prove that she was more than just the girl who failed her family's expectations. As the weeks turned into months, Olivia found something she hadn't realized she needed: a purpose. She didn't know where it would lead her, but for the first time, she felt like she was moving in the right direction. And that was enough to keep her going. Life wasn't easy for Olivia, but somewhere in the midst of the chaos, she began to find a sense of purpose. The weight of the past still clung to her, especially the expectations her father had set for her, but it no longer held the same power. She threw herself into her studies, a fire igniting within her as she learned coding and software development. For the first time in years, she felt like she was in control of something. Not for anyone else, not to prove anything to her parents, but for herself. The code was a language she could understand. It was a way to create something that mattered. It wasn't about money. She wasn't thinking of cashing in on her talents or making a name for herself at the expense of others. No, Olivia's motivation was driven by something much more personal. She wanted to help students like the ones she had once been who struggled with traditional educational systems. She wanted to build something that could give them a voice, a tool that made learning accessible on their own terms. That passion propelled her through long nights of coding, debugging, and testing her ideas. Building the app. An idea transformed into reality. At first, the process was slow. Olivia wasn't the fastest coder, and at times, she doubted whether her idea would ever come to life. Her app, which she named FlowLearn, was designed to adapt to each individual student's learning pace, offering personalized tutoring in a flexible, easy-to-use platform. Every time she hit a roadblock, she would close her laptop and stare at the wall, wondering if her vision was just a pipe dream. But then, every time she stumbled, she picked herself up. Each bug fixed, each feature added was a small victory. And soon, Olivia realized that the app was more than just a project. It was becoming her mission. As she continued developing FlowLearn, Olivia sought feedback from her friends, teachers, and even strangers she met online who had struggled with education. The app wasn't just an academic tool. It was a lifeline. It gave students who felt ignored or left behind in traditional classrooms a chance to thrive. They could learn at their own pace, ask questions without fear of judgment, and access resources that catered to their individual needs. Olivia felt a deep satisfaction every time someone reached out to thank her for creating something that helped them feel seen. But no one was more critical than Olivia herself. She pored over every line of code, scrutinizing each part of the app. It wasn't perfect, and she knew it. There were days when she wanted to scrap the whole thing and start fresh. Yet, there was something that kept her going, the same force that had gotten her through the darkest days in the past. She was determined to prove that her idea was worth something. Landing the internship, a step toward the dream, her hard work eventually paid off. Olivia applied for an internship at a well-known tech startup that focused on educational technology. The competition was fierce, and Olivia was an underdog, a community college student with no prestigious degrees or connections. But when she walked into that interview, she didn't feel nervous. For the first time in a long time, she was confident in what she had to offer. She spoke passionately about FlowLearn, explaining how it could change the way students interacted with learning. The CEO of the startup, a well-respected figure in the tech industry, seemed intrigued. A week later, Olivia received the email that would change her life. She'd been selected for the internship. That moment marked the beginning of her career in tech. She was no longer just a student or someone trying to figure things out on her own. She was a developer with a real opportunity to make a difference. At the startup, Olivia was given the chance to work alongside industry professionals who pushed her to hone her skills. She learned more in her first few months there than she had in the past year of self-study. Her confidence grew, and with it, her sense of self-worth. Recognized for innovation, Olivia's rise in the tech community. As Olivia's time at the startup continued, FlowLearn started gaining traction. Word of mouth spread as more students began using it, and soon Olivia was being recognized in the tech community for her innovative approach to education. A local tech blog featured her app in an article about the best education tools of the year. That exposure led to invitations to speak at tech conferences, and before long, Olivia was sharing her story with people from all over the world. Her voice was heard in a way it never had been before. She wasn't just Olivia, the daughter of Gregory Pierce, a successful CEO. She was Olivia, the creator of FlowLearn, a tool that was changing lives. It was a bittersweet victory. While she had achieved so much, the emptiness of her family's rejection still lingered. Her father never reached out to congratulate her, nor did her mother. They were too proud, too wrapped up in their own world, to acknowledge her success. The silence was deafening. Even when she was awarded the prestigious Tech Innovator of the Year at a global conference, there was no message from them. Her phone remained silent. Olivia's heart, though proud of her accomplishments, still longed for the approval that would never come. It wasn't about the award, it was about the validation she had spent years searching for. But Olivia realized that she had to stop seeking validation from them. She had done the work. She had proven to herself that she was more than what they had expected. Mentoring the next generation, a full circle moment. As Olivia's career soared, she began mentoring young developers and students who were trying to navigate the same challenges she had once faced. Her passion for education grew even stronger, and she made it a point to give back. At the conferences where she spoke, she would encourage aspiring developers to stay true to their vision and to never let anyone tell them they weren't good enough. During a particularly moving speech at an international tech summit, Olivia shared her story of rejection, survival, and ultimate success. "I know what it feels like to be told you're not good enough. I know what it feels like to be pushed aside. But that doesn't define you. Only you can define your worth. It's not about proving others wrong. It's about proving to yourself that you can do it," she said, her voice steady and filled with conviction. The audience responded with a standing ovation, and Olivia couldn't help but smile. She had come so far, but even as she helped others find their way, the silence from her family remained. It was a constant ache, a reminder of everything she had lost in the pursuit of her own path. Yet, Olivia had come to understand something important. Her family's rejection didn't have to define her. She had built a life for herself, a career that brought her fulfillment, and a community that respected her for who she was. And that was enough. Knock knock. Now you're about to watch the best part of the story. But before that, make sure to subscribe to my channel so we can keep going together. The gala was a grand affair, one of the most prestigious events in the tech and education community. The ballroom gleamed with opulence, draped in golden lights that reflected off the polished floors, and the air buzzed with excitement. Olivia stood in the wings, nervously adjusting her dress, trying to steady her breath. It was the moment she had been waiting for, a moment when she would finally be acknowledged for the years of hard work, innovation, and sacrifice. Tonight, she was being honored for her contributions to education technology and for creating FlowLearn, the app that had already helped thousands of students break through barriers in traditional education systems. For months, she had imagined this night. She dreamt of the applause, the recognition, the moment when all her struggles would finally pay off. But as she stepped forward onto the stage, her heart raced, and her thoughts became muddled. This was the culmination of everything she had worked for, everything she had fought for. And then, as the announcer's voice rang out over the microphone, Olivia's stomach dropped. Tonight's honoree, the announcer said with enthusiasm, is not only a pioneering force in the world of education but also a symbol of perseverance. Olivia Pierce has revolutionized the way we think about learning with her innovative platform, FlowLearn, which has already helped millions of students across the world. In recognition of her groundbreaking work, we are pleased to announce that she will receive a generous donation of $2 million to continue her research, development, and mission to bring accessible education to all. The room erupted in applause, and Olivia's chest tightened. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. She had expected this recognition, yes, but she had not expected what followed. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer continued, this generous donation comes from none other than Mosaic Technologies, a leader in the tech industry, and a company known for its contributions to education. Mosaic Technologies has been instrumental in making this award possible. As the announcer paused, the crowd's applause continued, but Olivia's world seemed to freeze. The words echoed in her ears, and her breath caught in her throat. Mosaic Technologies, her father's company. Gregory Pierce, the man who had cast her aside without a second thought, was the one behind the money, the very funding that would propel her career even further. The realization struck her like a thunderclap. She blinked, unable to breathe, her mind swirling in disbelief. The irony, the cruel, sharp irony, was almost too much to bear. The man who had rejected her, who had told her she was not good enough, who had sent her out into the world alone, was now the same person who was making this possible. It was like a slap in the face, a cruel reminder that the very system she had fought against, the very world that had left her feeling abandoned, was now part of her triumph. As the applause echoed around her, Olivia's smile faltered, and a wave of nausea swept over her. She could feel her legs shaking as the weight of the moment bore down on her. This was the moment she had dreamed of, standing on stage, being recognized for all the hard work she had put in, for all the sacrifices she had made. But now that moment was tainted. The recognition she had fought so hard to earn felt hollow, tainted by the knowledge that it was funded by the same man who had made her feel worthless for so long. The applause continued, a chorus of admiration for her achievements, but Olivia felt detached from it, as though the sound was coming from a distance. She had worked so hard to get here, and yet the victory felt stolen. Was this worth it? She wondered. Was this success truly mine if it came from him? Her mind began to race. She had built FlowLearn with her own hands, poured hours and hours of her life into it, enduring long nights and countless doubts. She had put everything into making a difference, to help students who had struggled just like she had. And now, here she was, receiving an award funded by the very man who had dismissed her, the man who had only seen her as a failure. Olivia stood frozen, the weight of the applause pressing on her chest. She felt as if the entire room was watching her, waiting for her to respond. But how could she respond when everything she had worked for felt so contaminated by her past? The idea of accepting the recognition, of standing there with pride, felt like it would be an act of betrayal to everything she had fought for. Her father's influence, his company, was now entwined in her success, and the very notion of it felt like a knife in her back. She had wanted this, no, she had needed this recognition, but not like this, not at the cost of losing herself in the process. Her father's company, the company that had provided her with the very thing she had wanted, funding for her research, was now the source of the deepest betrayal she had ever felt. She had imagined standing on the stage, finally acknowledged, finally seen, but now she realized that standing there felt like an empty victory. Was it truly worth it? Was the success she had fought so hard for really hers? She had built FlowLearn from the ground up, but now it felt like it belonged to someone else. The man who had pushed her out, the man who had made her feel like she wasn't enough. As the announcer's voice faded out, Olivia tried to keep her composure. She forced a smile, but it felt strained, like a mask that couldn't quite fit her face. The applause was still echoing, but now it sounded distant, as if it belonged to someone else. She had won, yes. She had proven herself to the world. But this wasn't the moment she had imagined. This wasn't the recognition she had dreamed of. She glanced down at the $2 million donation that had been made in her name. The weight of it pressed heavily on her, and a sense of bitterness rose in her chest. This was supposed to be a reward for her work, for her vision. But now it felt like a cruel joke. Was she really just another cog in her father's machine? Was that all she was to him? Someone to use for his own pride? Her emotions swirled. Anger, disbelief, a deep, searing sense of betrayal. She had done everything right. She had overcome the odds, proved her worth, and made something that changed the lives of students. But now, the success she had earned felt tainted, like the price of this achievement had been sold to the highest bidder. The applause continued, but it felt like a distant echo in Olivia's ears. This was supposed to be mine, she thought, a bitter taste forming in her mouth. I earned this, not him, not his company. Yet here she was, standing in front of everyone, accepting a gift from the one person who had never believed in her. And in that moment, it felt like everything she had worked for had been hijacked by her past. As the applause continued to echo through the ballroom, Olivia could barely hold herself together. She stood at the center of the stage, her smile frozen, her heart a storm of conflicting emotions. She had worked her whole life for this moment, the moment when her name would be spoken with respect, when the world would recognize her for her hard-earned accomplishments. But standing there, the recognition felt more like a weight, a burden rather than a triumph. The moment she dreamed of was tainted by an unexpected twist. The applause, once deafening, seemed to fade into a dull roar. The faces in the crowd blurred as she tried to grasp what had just been revealed. The $2 million donation that came with the award, meant to fund her research, meant to elevate her work, had come from none other than Mosaic Technologies, the company her father had built from the ground up. The company that had rejected her, cast her out like an unwanted possession. The irony of it all slammed into her like a tidal wave. Her father's name, once a symbol of everything she had despised, was now woven into her success. The moment she had longed for, the recognition she had fought for, felt tainted. The money, the recognition, the spotlight, it all felt like a cruel joke. The very man who had told her she wasn't good enough was now the one funding the success she had earned. Her emotions swirled like a whirlwind. Anger, disbelief, a deep, searing sense of betrayal. She had done this on her own. She had created FlowLearn not for the approval of anyone else, but because she believed in it, because she knew it could change lives. And now here she was, standing on the stage, receiving the applause and the accolades. But it wasn't just for her. It was for Mosaic Technologies, for a company that had treated her like a failure. She could feel the weight of the applause pressing down on her, like an unwanted chain around her neck. She had worked so hard to get here. She had struggled, faced rejection, fought for her place in the world. But now the victory felt hollow. She had succeeded, yes, but it wasn't her victory. It was a victory tainted by the shadow of the man who had cast her aside all those years ago. She had won the world's recognition, but not her father's. As the applause faded, Olivia's mind raced. What now? How could she accept an award funded by the very man who had made her feel worthless? Was this what she had worked for all these years, only to have her success forever linked to him, to his name, to his company? Her thoughts were a blur, and for a moment, she didn't know what to do. Should she walk off the stage, reject the award? Should she expose the truth to the audience, let them know where the money came from? Or should she play along, pretend that this was just another step in her journey, that everything was fine? But then, as she stood there, trying to gather herself, she saw him. There, in the distance, was her father. He was making his way toward the exit, his face twisted in disgust, unwilling to acknowledge that his daughter, whom he had discarded years ago, had become someone worthy of recognition. His expression was a mix of arrogance and disdain, and for a brief moment, Olivia could feel the bitter sting of everything she had been through. Without thinking, she turned and made her way off the stage, pushing her way through the crowd. Her heart pounded in her chest, but there was no turning back. She wasn't going to let this end like this. Not with him walking away, ignoring her like she was nothing. Not with her success tainted by his indifference. "Dad!" she called out, her voice shaky, but her resolve firm. She couldn't just let him walk away without confronting him. Her father stopped, his broad back stiffening as he turned slowly to face her. His eyes locked onto hers, cold and unreadable. The years of distance between them felt like an ocean, but Olivia didn't flinch. "What is it, Olivia?" He spat, his voice venomous. "You think I'm going to congratulate you now? Is that what you want? After all this time?" The words hit Olivia like a slap. She had hoped, just for a moment, that he might acknowledge her, that he might see her as someone worthy of respect. But that hope was quickly dashed. The man who had thrown her out all those years ago, who had called her a failure, still saw her as nothing more than an inconvenience. But Olivia didn't back down. This was her moment, not for him but for herself. "No," she said, her voice steady, despite the storm inside her. "I didn't ask for your congratulations. I didn't ask for your approval. I earned this on my own. And now I'm going to give this away. The $2 million, every cent of it, will go to scholarships for students who have been overlooked, just like I was." Her father sneered, his lips curling into a condescending smile. "You think you've won, don't you?" he said, his voice dripping with scorn. "You're still the same failure. No amount of money, no recognition will ever change that." Olivia felt a surge of anger, but she didn't let it consume her. She didn't need to prove anything to him anymore. She had already won. She didn't say another word. She didn't need to. There was nothing more to say to him. Her actions would speak louder than any words ever could. As she turned and walked away, she realized something important, something that had been missing for so long. Her father's approval, his validation, didn't matter anymore. She didn't need him to define her. She had built her life on her own terms. She had created a legacy that wasn't tied to his name, his money, or his expectations. The next day, Olivia made the donation. The money that had once been tied to rejection, to bitterness, to the years of pain and struggle, was now part of something greater. It was part of a future she was building, one where other students, those who had been overlooked and forgotten, could find a place to succeed, just as she had. She didn't look back. As she made the donation, she knew that this act, this decision, was more than just about the money. It was about her reclaiming her power, her worth, and her future. It was about breaking free from the chains of her past and creating something that would outlast her father's judgment. Olivia had built a life on her own terms, and for the first time in her life, that was more than enough. What do you think? I'd love to hear your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Whether it's how you relate to Olivia's story or your own experiences with overcoming adversity. Don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe so you don't miss the next exciting story. Thank you so much for sticking with me until the end, and I appreciate you taking the time to listen. See you in the next one.